In February of 2014, 10 pals embarked on a journey of a lifetime when traveling to Brazil. The purpose of our trip was to broaden our perspectives on global agriculture and gain a deeper understanding of international agribusiness. We started our journey in Sao Paulo State, staying in Sao Paulo, and ended it with a night in Rio de Janeiro. Here are the 5 things that I learned on this adventure. Number 1, sugarcane rules. Brazil is number 1 in the world in sugarcane production. They export 50% of what they produce, providing 25% of the world's sugar. They have only recently mechanized the harvest process and are able to harvest 3 rows at a time. This is huge compared to flash burning and hand harvesting, which has been the norm for hundreds of years. I found it very interesting that the bottom 2 feet of the sugarcane plant contains 80% of the sugar. We were fortunate to visit a Case IH plant in Piracicaba, where sugarcane harvesters, coffee harvesters, and sprayers are made. It was very interesting to see the different equipment and realize how global companies like Case IH and John Deere really are. We also had the opportunity to visit a Monsanto research facility in Campinas, where they are developing new varieties including GMO sugarcane. It takes 12 years to develop a new variety of sugarcane. One scientist compared this process to raising a child. He was excited to finally see his child growing in the fields. And as you can see, the scientists and employees were very proud of the work that they were doing to help farmers and the world. Monsanto's focus of conserve more, produce more, and improve lives was something that their employees take very serious. The area of Brazil that we were in was in a drought at that time, and so the sugarcane did not look very good. Number 2, infrastructure problems. Brazil has many infrastructure issues that they are trying to address. When compared to the United States, they move 269 billion tons of agriculture products by railroad, compared to the United States moving 2,863 billion tons. We only saw one railroad the whole entire time we were there. There are about 44% paved roads in Brazil, compared to 88% in the United States. And in some cases, farmers are building their own roads just to get to their fields due to the government not addressing these issues. Also, Brazil has only 2 world-class ports compared to the United States having 8. Sometimes as much as 75% of their grain will rot in the field or in trucks just waiting to get to one of these ports, as it takes up to 7 to 10 days for a truck to haul their grain there. Number 3, technology and government. We take for granted what technologies we have readily available in the United States. Although they have the same state-of-the-art farm equipment that we have, the use of GPS guidance systems and internet is limited and very poor. So they do not have a lot of cell phone system or internet. Government overreach is also a very big problem in Brazil. They have many burdensome regulations and very high taxes that hamper progress in many areas. They also control the loans that farmers use to operate on their land. We toured a newly built John Deere factory in Itatubá that was building construction type equipment like loaders and backhoes. There were a lot of United States workers there from the Dubuque factory, teaching them how to run the very state-of-the-art welders and other equipment. We learned that the equipment built in Brazil has to be made up of 60% of local content in order to qualify for their government loan system. Number 4, beef is what's for dinner in Brazil. In 2010, Brazil slaughtered 39 million head and consumed 80% of that. United States consumption of beef is at 44%. We ate at a lot of Brazilian steakhouses and completely believe this statistic. They love their beef. There are currently 205 million animals on feed in Brazil, and they are number 1 in the world in beef exports. Their cattle are mostly grass-fed, and they have very few feedlots. They do not use growth-promoting antibiotics and cannot use implants. We were in an area that we saw a lot of cattle grazing. In the near future, they're going to have to look at making improvements on how they graze and feed their cattle to be able to produce more for their growing population as well as the world. Like the United States, consumers have questions and misconceptions about agriculture. Since 84% of the population lives in cities, you can only imagine where consumers think their foods come from. One hurdle that they have been able to overcome is the widely approved use of genetically modified raised crops. Those foods containing a GMO ingredient is marked with a yellow triangle with the letter T. We visited a grocery store in Sao Paulo and stopped at many roadside Quick Trip type stores. It was very interesting to see the kinds of products that their consumers are buying and the different packaging of foods that we also have here in the United States. You could find the eggs in the non-refrigerated area with their produce, and most of the milk and cheese had been processed to be able to be kept at room temperature. Number 5. A typical Brazilian farm does not look like the United States farms. In Brazil, the typical farm is a family corporation with absentee owners living in cities. Most workers on the farms are employees only, not family members. 25% of the population are employed by 500,000 farmers. They rent their equipment from dealers or share them with other farms. Their transportation costs are 4 times what they are in the United States, mainly due to infrastructure problems. Most areas where crops are grown in Brazil are able to produce 3, maybe 4 crops in a year. A lot of times they will do a corn, soybean, summer corn, cotton type of rotation. It's very typical for a planter and the combine to be in the field at the same time in the large grain-producing regions. Pictures like this isn't a reality for a lot of farms in Brazil. Contrary to what we hear in the United States, they are not chopping down the Amazon to farm more ground. They have very strict regulations on what we used to call set-aside, based on the area that they farm in. In the area closest to the Amazon, they can only farm 50% of the acres. The rest has to be left native. It is a beautiful country. We saw many breathtaking views in our travels around the Sao Paulo state and Rio de Janeiro area. The people of Brazil were very proud of their heritage and were very excited that we were there to learn from them. A trip to Rio ended our week in Brazil where we were able to enjoy Copacabana Beach, Christ the Redeemer, and Sugarloaf Mountain. This was truly a learning experience of a lifetime that I will always treasure, and I hope to apply what I learned for many years to come. And as they say in Portuguese, obrigado, or thank you.